Hey everyone, Bryan Barletta here from Sounds Profitable, and welcome to another product deep dive. I'm very excited because we have Sean Howard, founder and CEO of Flightpath, back for the second deep dive this year. We're going to continue digging into the specifics of the Flightpath platform and what it means to really optimize your campaigns and performance. So Sean, welcome back to the deep dive series.
Always a joy. Thank you, Bryan.
So Sean, do you want to quickly recap what we went over in the first deep dive? And we'll put a link in the episode description for people to click on.
Yeah, 100%. We unveiled sort of, I think it was our first time going over it in a deep dive where we showcased our algorithms that we use to basically predict performance and into the future. And then I think we also gave a preview of our sales availability tool where we can actually give reliable availability as well into the future to sales teams to sort of speed up the quote to cash process.
And I love that because that accountability and that planning allows people to understand where their shortfalls are going to be or where their successes are and to plan around them, where things are going to get really tight and whatnot. And remember that Flightpath is meant to be a front end. It's meant to be your full tool to handle all of your campaign management for one or more networks or publishers that you work with. It can work for an individual publisher or it can work across multiple of them if you're putting together a network. And it's focused on integrating with as many hosting platforms as possible. So what I'm really excited about is that Sean's focus and background has been on the ops and optimization side, right? We tend to pass over these things. We sell a campaign, we have available downloads, we have available impressions, and we believe that the platforms are just going to work because ultimately everybody gets paid if all of these things work correctly. But there are nuances to it, right? Like how things are flighted, how they're delivered, the pacing process, the yield aspect of all of these things, and how every campaign, whether it's locally served or served by the marketplace or served programmatically, all interacts together. So Sean today wanted to bring us through pacing and some of the more detailed pieces of the campaign management side of this platform, because this is really where you optimize things. So Sean, let's dive in.
Yeah, I think the first part we're going to do is more just a conversation around, I think when we look at where Flightpath has evolved from, we evolved from our prediction engine, which we demonstrated last time. So this ability to predict episodes over 95% accurate well into the future, which led into our availability engine. But prediction is just the start. Really, where we're heading is sort of this idea of being able to optimize yield. And some of that is what I'm going to show you today in the campaign section, where the finance side of your organization, because some of our clients are already looking for being able to predict dollars, not just flight performance, right? It makes sense.
Yeah.
But also this idea that helping the ops teams and even sales, like the whole organization, optimize their campaigns better. So now that Flightpath has basically a series of algorithms that allow us to manage third-party platforms, we can start to give new tools to ad ops to give them some better ways to hit the goals that they have for an individual campaign or a flight.
Yeah.
So I think a classic example that we all run into in this space is even pacing, right? I think every one of us who's been on the ops side of this, we've been like, oh, we have a buyer. They want us to flight something, and even pacing. Like they want us to give the 200,000 impressions, but they want it to run for the whole month. And so one of the frustrations is that selecting paced flights in most DAI platforms is frustrating. It does not go as planned. So every ops team I know, they have a separate Excel where they're monitoring. They have a list of all the things they've set to even pacing, and they have to check them every week, if not more frequently, to be like, are they under? Are they over?
What's the idea? When I set even pacing, let's say it's over a 30-day period, what does that mean? So let's just make it easy. 300,000 impressions, does that mean that it's 10,000 impressions a day? Like, is that what we're talking about here? Like, even is literally every single day in Silo gets 1/30th of it. Like, what is even pacing to you?
Yeah. So I think one of the challenges with even pacing is the easiest would be to say, hey, it's just 10,000 a day, right? I should be able to do the math. I can't do the math. So you'd think, oh, you could just say, oh, we want 300,000, so we divide by that average per day. But what we all know is that flights are impacted by releases, right? Like this flight here, you can see an example. This is precog predicting what this flight's going to do. And we're on day one, by the way. So we're identifying this is going to hit 96% on day one, and we don't even have a full day one yet. But we know we're going to get a big hit in 2 days when there's a release, right? And it's in the system. So if we were just to pace this at 100,000 or whatever, 10,000 a day, we're going to screw ourselves in the future, excuse my language, because we're not going to be able to make up those missing. And that's the pain in most pacing systems. By the time the ad ops team realizes it's underperforming, it's so far underperforming, you could put it to 100%. There's no getting it back. We have to now ask for an extension.
So in most models, like if I miss 10,000 today, say I only get 5,000, would that 5,000 then be spread out on the 29 remaining days?
It depends. Every DIY platform is different. Some of them seem to just have an average per day of the week for a show, which I guess assumes your show releases weekly. Others try to front load a 25%. They've just made up this number. So what our system is doing is it's literally looking at the projection curve here and saying, I'm going to reserve this amount, which is also part of our availability engine. So the algorithm is basically going to reserve, you're going to flight higher on the 12th than you would on any other day. We're going to follow this curve. And then it's going to optimize itself every day. So, we sort of have three states that the algorithm looks at right now. And this, by the way, is just coming. We're just releasing this soon. But we basically have a world where we're in abundance. We have a world where we call it screwed. We're under abundance, and we have sort of the norm. And so the algorithm behaves differently depending on, what state of the world looks like. Like, is the future a world of abundance, or is the future a world of trickle? Because we have all of us have shows that trickle at the end. They don't have another episode coming. Right. And so we need to know that now in order to do the pacing properly.
Well, what's attractive with this with precog, and you guys have a killer accuracy. We're talking like single digit percentage, like closeness to what actually happens for the downloads and available impressions. With those curves, what you're showing is that ideally outside of that bump that you showed there, outside of that bump, everything is even pacing. And it's the acknowledgement that in podcasting, because it's about delivery multiple times, there are multiple new downloads, whether it's multiple days a week, once a week, multiple days a month. You might run a campaign if it's for just one episode. If you don't catch that bump in that episode and you try and pace it out through all of it, you might never be able to hit it. So that
100%.
Bump is really important. So part of this is the technical of how you guys handle it. But the other part is that we have to do education. Like pacing is a concept when a website has consistent daily traffic. Everybody goes to their news website every single day. It's part of their habit. They go in there. The podcast releasing every single day probably has enough of a flow that these pacing engines work well enough. But I'm sure Saturday and Sundays throw those things off unless they're actually releasing 7 days a week, which, Godspeed in that scenario. But we're dealing with a lot of people who are releasing once or twice a week, once or twice a month, and we need to be accountable for that. So you're showing us right here the updated precog and how accurate it is, right?
Yeah, so we expose this to all of our clients. So you can see this on a day by day, week by week, but this is basically what we projected versus actuals on a week by week basis in this case.
Awesome.
Yeah, thanks. We worked really hard. And so precog as it learns every publisher. So yeah, you're 100% right. And I think every ops team knows that there are issues around all the pacing, right? Every pacing option out there. But that's only true in podcasting. Like if we were to move out of podcasting into traditional media or anywhere else, you have companies like YieldX, right? Where you can choose their algorithm, which is proven intensely better. You can even, I think, swap it out for Google Ad Manager, right? You can choose that you want to use YieldX versus Google Ad Manager. And so Flightpath is the same thing, just for the podcasting space. So our algorithms are designed for podcasting. So my hope is that at some point, we don't have to educate sales. We just have to be able to say, ad ops just needs to be able to say to sales, we can deliver pacing for you. Yeah. Go and sell it. And the other difference is Flightpath, there's no change to the ops team. Like we're pulling everything down from the DAI and we're monitoring it, as I was showing you. But then, everything will still behave the same. Like the team will be able to place the order like on Booster, get it punched into their DAI. And then all the team's gonna have to do is select that flight and say, hey, Flightpath, run this for us, and they'll choose whatever algorithm they want.
Yeah.
We have a pacing algorithm that we're really excited about, but we're also working on a share of voice pacing where you can set a max or a min share of voice you want to hit. There's some challenges with how share of voice is being determined in our industry, but aside from that, we think there's some really interesting stuff we can do where we can provide this level of reliability now around some of the things that are difficult to do.
Let's break that down a little bit. So yield is the optimization of revenue and fill rate in your inventory, right? So this is something that doesn't come up that often in podcasting. I mean, we have some platforms out there that have yield-based tools, or we talk about it. But from my past AdOps experience, I mean, it was the number one thing. Podcasting has a lot of available inventory, and very few people are selling out 100%. But I've been talking about this for a while, and it was one of the main things that me and Sean hit on and really bonded over. At some point, that squeeze is going to happen, and failing to fill 10, 15, 20% of your inventory because the tools you have are not squeezing every last available impression is going to make or break your ability to perform as a company. So the idea here that Sean's talking about is that in other ad serving platforms, Google's Campaign Manager, DoubleClick Campaign Manager, and the other ad servers, DV360, all these other ones out there that you can get in other industries, you can use different methodologies, different algorithms for how pacing is handled. YieldX is a very popular one. These people charge on a CPM basis for you to select which one you want, and you use their model. So it's hitting the gas and the brakes on all this. So what we're talking about here is Flightpath taking the reins here. If you put something in pacing in your hosting platform, it says our algorithm is going to do this. And what we're finding, and I think it's pretty fair to say, is that across the board, we're missing the mark on this as an industry. Across the board, we're missing the mark on terms and share of voice. And it doesn't matter about the interpretation, it matters about the results. And the results are falling short. So
I think every AdOps team, every sales team has had the experience, even just trying to get avails out of their DAI host, right? Like it's not reliable what we're getting back. And one of the problems is, I want to kind of be like, I love what you're talking about, but like if we were to take that analogy, right, then that would say, oh, I can go to AdsWiz, I can go to Megaphone, I can go to Triton, and instead of their yield, I can choose a yield. I still think we're a long way away from there. So the idea of Flightpath is we don't host your content. Like you continue to work with Triton, with Megaphone, whoever that we support, and we're going to manage the yield without having to move that file off of that platform, right? Like you are still going to be delivering on your DAI host. We're just going to manage that yield in a better way.
And that's really cool. I mean, all these hosting platforms to some degree are built on an API, whether they're open or not for it. And when you think about it, pacing is saying, like, campaign management is kind of dumb, right? Like it's really on or off, right? Like if you have 10,000 impressions that you're supposed to serve today and you hit 10,000, the campaign turns off when it is reconciled that it's hit 10,000. Now there's a lot of complicated pieces of that, and it's how many times do they send out that impression into a download? Does that download actually get received? Does it count as an IAB download? Does it get excluded? And figuring out for every 5 I send out, I only get 2 back that actually were delivered. That math is really important, and it's different down to the app that requested it, the hosting platform, the complexity of the setup, and all of that there. But at the end of the day, when something has met its pacing requirements, it's turned off. And so what we're talking about right here is Flightpath's ability to just say, don't use the built-in aspect of this. Through API calls, we're going to monitor this data in real time, and we're going to hit the gas and brakes. We're going to look at it in real time and say, with precog, we should over-deliver today because we know that we're going to under-deliver in 5 days from now. And you just play that game back and forth. And that is so attractive because that means, like you said, we're way ahead of this on there. Like it's going to take a while for all of this to be able to work with one platform. Even if you were doing things programmatically, you can still cause headaches if you were to serve everything programmatically, not serve anything locally on a hosting platform, and pump the brakes across every hosting platform out there that can handle a VAST tag. You would end up in that rough situation. You're doing it natively. And that's a big thing to emphasize. This doesn't touch programmatic yet. This touches the campaigns that you manage in your hosting platform and using your hosting platform's gas and brakes in real time.
And I should say, this is the next feature we're working on, and having a lot of fun with it right now on a few test cases. But and we are also talking about what we can do in the VAST space for our clients, because more and more, right, they're running everything across programmatic plus direct sale. So what I want to talk about too, unless you have more questions on that, I want to talk about. I wanted to also show what we're working on in the campaign space, because one of the challenges around campaign reporting that sort of has been rising up is that billing or the business side is often left with next to no tools. They're getting spreadsheets from everyone, right? Monthly. So because we're able to predict individual, right, every flight that's running, and we can predict availability in the system and the future, one of the questions that started to come to us was, hey, we're trying to, we got these CFOs that are trying to plan revenue into the future, and what is the future going to look like? And so this is what I'm here to show you today. So we'll start with like a small campaign. So 7-Up. So I think this is an example of a campaign that is complete, just as a starting point. So we were able to pull up a unified sort of campaign report here. The difference being that it's in this case, this is a campaign that's done. So we have like a capped billable to date. And you can see there's some places that we've underperformed, and places where we're sort of matching what what the customer was told. So in some cases, this is a bill as actuals. So we've underbilled, right? We haven't delivered the impressions that we want. And this is a standard kind of report, right? So this is not really indicative of what I want to show. Let's just take one that has, so this is what we're going to do unwell. So this is an example where this is some of the precog performance data where we have flights that are predicted. So this flight that's running right now, I was showing to you earlier, is predicted to hit 96%. So it's going to be short 3,000 impressions. And when I go down here into our billing, you can start to see how this works now. You can see the actuals up to today, and then you can see predicted into the future. And we're getting pretty close to our booked goal. Now, I want to also say the booked goal is coming out of the Salesforce automation platform for this client. So we're pulling in the IO booked. So this finance can be like, because like when we're in the AdOps world, we're setting targets like mad, right? Like we want to overperform this order so that we can make up overall on the campaign.
And that's really rough too. Like the levers that you have in a hosting platform for AdOps, like, hey, everybody who's watching this, if you have not sat with your AdOps team and watched the absolute insanity that they have to jump through to make things work to get the end result, like Sean's saying here, the numbers that you enter in the AdOps have nothing to do with the campaign. You could be desperately trying to hit that last 20,000 impressions and have to put some insane 10 billion impression number in there and a ranked priority so it squeaks it out, and then you turn it off manually just to make that happen. These things haven't been a focus because we've been focusing on other aspects of advertising. And it's not a knock. It just shows you the value of a specialized company really focusing on it. So being able to pull from Salesforce saying this is what we sold, broken down by each show, then pull the actuals from each show, that's really powerful.
And not just actuals. I'm projecting. So if we go down here, look at this. My actuals are $52. So basically, this is only a month out, but this is running right now. But I'm basically telling billing, you can expect $1,900, right? And now billing could go back to AdOps and be like, hey, I need that to hit 2,000. In this case, there's probably not much they can do beyond extend, right? But yeah. So basically, let me give you a better example. Let's look at one that's way into the future. I'm just looking at my notes as to which one.
I love when you say better example, like these aren't already home runs of examples. I mean, it's so interesting to me to look at that, because just being able to see that, like that's today, that episode launched today, and you're saying out of $2,000 of available spend, there's so much competition for that episode that it's basically not billable. $50 out of $2,000, you might as well just remove that.
$100 you're not going to get that last $100.
And so to hit that goal, like, what do? That's figuring that out. Like, I'm excited to see, what do I do with this? Because you just told me where the shortfall is, but now I want to know what I do.
That's our AdOps side. So our AdOps side, we have, I'm going to talk about this next time, so I'm not going to give it away. It is super freaking cool though. Like, I'll give you it's like, imagine being able to drive a flight into a garage and have it checked up. Anyways, it's coming, but you'll love it. But what I want to show you right now is, let's look at another example for like, this is a renewal that came in for one show. And here's our projected performance, and all the way through the end of December. And again, we're at over 96% reliability right now. So, but basically this is saying right now that, hey, finance, you can count on $4,129 of that $4,320. You got it. That's solid. And so if that's a problem for finance, that last 100, or let's say this is worth times 100, right? But it allows finance right now to be like, oh, this is reality. Because right now we're all living in fantasy. Sorry, you're over on this screen. But right, we're all just living in this fantasy world of, oh, the money will come in. Sometimes it won't, even though we all know we're sitting on crazy, right, availability.
Yeah.
Right, 40, 50%. The problem is that is not evenly distributed. Our top shows, right? Sales loves to sell a certain small set of shows. Those are the ones that get pounded. And reality sometimes is not that you're going to hit all your numbers. In fact, often not. So this is our first time to give finance now that tool to say, hey, you can now count on this money or not count on this money all the way out to December or next year.
That's awesome. That prediction is great. And how often, again, how often are you tweaking the prediction, the precog?
So there's a couple answers to that. We basically daily we're running all our analysis. Everything is being updated daily. So when the team comes in the morning, but the key there is you don't have to like wait. Like I showed you a flight that had launched today. Like I have like a partial data point. We've already projected it into the future, right? All the flights. But we're also doing what we call mini runs. So because we're working on availability and a hold system, we need the ability as new orders are coming in to update everything. So that is happening throughout the day as the hold system goes into place.
And that, I mean, that's really powerful too, because like this campaign's live or booked to be live. And we're seeing this here.
We're right here. This is our actuals here, right? At the beginning, 16. This is where we are.
I mean, like, let's say like we have a really large ad ops team and I'm looking at this and I was like, wow, this is real tight. This is going to be not good. I don't know what to do. And again, we're going to get into that in the next deep dive, which I'm real pumped about because the actionable part of this, like, congratulations, you've now given everybody the proper tools to hyperventilate 3 months in advance. I'm excited to put it into action. I guess my question is like, let's say this is already tight and somebody else on ad ops goes to put in another campaign. Does it tell them, hey, you might make this other campaign worse? Does it email me or send a notification immediately like, hey, someone just made your life more difficult?
So where we started was yield prediction, right? We started with, hey, we can predict yield, we can predict availability, and now we've started to roll out that availability in a hold system. But you're dead on with where we're heading. What Flightpath is built to do is yield optimize. So I'm going to answer in two parts. First of all, finance would prefer that people just tell them we're only going to come in at 96% on this now. They'd rather know it now, right?
Yeah.
It's worse when you add all these 10% up and now you're short in December or end of year, right? For like, that could be big, right? Like if you look at the margin that these companies are operating under. So the second half of it is, yes, 100%. We are starting to, we have an alert system, right, in Flightpath where we notify ad ops, right?
Is that the 25 in the top corner of your page right there?
Yes, that is 25 up here. And you can see some of the ones down here, which like we call it order triage. Yeah. Like here's just a test, but what needs help? But now what we're working on in the next phase is as orders come in, literally alerting ad ops where there are now problems that there weren't problems, right? So that could be escalated. 100%.
I like that because that allows someone to actually manage. Like I've been an ad ops manager before, and the ability to like look and provide support for my team and just kind of be the person playing Tetris while everybody else is just building their own individual block is really valuable. Negotiate. If you have, like you're saying, if you know you're going to come up short, being able to negotiate, being able to talk to the salesperson who continues to book that and seeing the problems that continue to happen there, the misunderstanding versus available inventory versus what's booked. Are people using the tools correctly? But if you use our availability, you're going to dodge all that. Like our availability takes all the future orders and conflicts into account. And I'm super excited, right, that we're starting to integrate that into the Salesforce automation platforms, right? So companies that are using Booster, for example, we're working to get that where you can just in Booster get that availability that you can trust. Yeah, 100%. And that yield, like, you've been really open in the past talking about Fable and Folly, the company that you started, the network on that. We're talking about, like, if you look at Fable and Folly for last year, that percentage of under deliver, what was it?
Last year we had 3 make goods, and our under delivery was, I think, less than 3%.
Well, way to hit that out of the park. But what was it before you built all these tools to make sure that was a home run?
It was insane. It was a nightmare.
Is it like, are we talking higher, like between 10 and 20% of like like unfilled inventory and underdelivered campaigns? Like,
we were doing what a lot of small networks do. We were running orders. We would run orders for 5-6 months in this manic attempt to try and get to make them hit. And sometimes they still wouldn't. I think we had orders that were running 9 months, and I remember looking at that world and being like, this is insane. We are just panicking. And each of those extensions, when you extend an order that long on a show, now it's impacting all the future. We're starting to be in trouble. Like, I can't tell you the number, because like the rest of the world running out of Excel, we were madly building Excels to try and figure out what our availability was, let alone we didn't even know our delivery, right?
But that's when you talk about extending it, basically you're saying is that this campaign I sold to be done in 3 months.
Right.
And by extending it 6 more months, you basically removed that inventory. You gave it away
from the future.
Because you weren't able to fill it. And that means that unless you get ahead of the sales team and say like, hey, cut what you're selling by 1/3. And also we already basically gave away this inventory for free. Like, we're talking about massive losses. We're talking about substantial enough, even at a small company. Like, I mean, we're talking easily 6 figures, right? Like, of losses.
We thought, 100%. We thought we could just sell our IAB downloads. Right? We thought, we'll hedge them by 5% or something. But, when we look at the increase of streaming, and this is my mid-roll, like at Fable and Folly, we're losing 16% of our IAB downloads, right?
Explain that to me. What do you mean when you say you're losing 16%?
We call it listener drop-off. That is the percentage of your IAB certified downloads you cannot deliver a mid-roll to on this host.
Meaning that you're looking at the available inventory that's firing for the pre-roll, every ad slot. And what you're saying is the download fires, the pre-roll fires, one mid-roll does, but the second one doesn't, and the post-roll doesn't. And that's what the drop-off shows?
There's a combination of things we're doing with this host, but this host gives us information about, did the insertion point actually fire? Even if it had anything or not, was it available to deliver?
And that's an IAB metric too, right? We're talking about it's IAB. It's called ad delivery. It's podcast impression. But you're saying that 16% of your downloads in this network, period, in this network, never got
of mid-roll. This is mid-rolls of mid-roll.
Specifically mid-roll.
And some of it is when we look at streaming, right? People will start and stop, and we see that now, right? Or they'll start after the mid-roll, right? Like they're on their drive home, and then they're opening it when they get home on another device, or switching it over, right, to a different device.
And it's a different IP, it's a different day, it's a different user agent, it's all these different things that complicate it. Because if it's not a 24-hour period with the same IP and same user agent for that whole download. Now, what's interesting about this is that more and more we're hearing things like certain apps are downloading in an entirety at one request, right? You hit play and it downloads it. That's, I believe, Spotify is, at the time of recording, that's what they're doing. But other apps aren't. Other apps are still saying, give it to me in chunks. Give me 10% at a time. And that's where these issues are.
There's a lot of things that add up, right? Like this was just one example. This was not what made us come up short. But I think knowing what our avails were was really hard, right? Because like in the world where you could just place, like we just had 2 pre-rolls, 2 mids on shows, and we were selling them one by one. It wasn't that hard. It's still problematic. But in the world where everything is flighted US, frequency capped, right? Like it's impossible to know what's available. So that's where these tools are more and more important.
And the granularity you have here, are you able to utilize this to test where the best points are to put ad slots in? Because I assume if you just set it to pre-roll, it should be pretty close. There should be next to no drop-off if it's a true pre-roll, right?
On this network, it's up to 9.4%.
That's crazy. That's because at what point is the average pre-roll? Like how many minutes is until you don't count it a pre-roll?
Great question. This would be a good, if you ever want to have a conversation, I'll bring on Michael on our data science team and you can have this conversation. It's fascinating conversation about why so much slippage on a pre-roll. But that's getting out of my, I understand it every time I talk with him. And then afterwards I'm like, I can't explain it.
And, I look at this as someone who was a product manager on ad ops platforms. And like, I helped build out parts of the Megaphone ad server and was a big part of Claritas and Barometric before that. Like these things aren't easy. And, at the teams that we had there, like I was the closest person who had ever really worked in ad ops. And it had been years since I had manually flighted a campaign. I would get in and I would try it every now and then and I would fall short to some degrees, because the truth is doing it every now and then isn't the same as sweating over it, isn't the same at looking at it like midnight and like grabbing your computer and rebooting a campaign because like you need to get that in there and you need to beat somebody else out and hoping that you don't wake up to a Slack message that you made somebody else's life miserable. These tools require that unique touch. And this is a sign of maturity for me in the podcast space, that this is the next step, because this is going to explode. This is what we need to make things more powerful. Because like you said, right, we're not only having unsold inventory, period, the end, but we're falling short on the inventory that we're selling. We're not, what sales is going to market with doesn't match the actuals, which we can use this tool to make sure that we're selling appropriately, but also we can figure out different ways to really get every little impression out of it, get every last drop out of it.
Yeah. I think one of the key things, so I got a lot of tests in here, but one of the key things is to give everyone tools where they don't have to be doing that competition anymore, right? So being able to show where there's a problem on day one is probably the biggest thing, right? So right now, we're basically saying, don't worry about this order. You're at 96%, right? So we do have, again, that 4% margin of error. So this is an example where plus or minus 4, right? We could still hit 100% on this order. And we're continuing to improve that. But we're also trying to identify, like, these are just fake examples, but we're trying to identify examples where, right, there's no data. It's a fake show. But we're trying to identify, like, if there's something in red here, you want to look at it, and then everything in green, even if it dropped today, you don't have to worry. And yellow, you're probably fine, right? So
I love that sorting.
It just allows ad-offs to be like, hey, do we have problems? Let's figure them out on Monday, our release day, and we can relax a little. Like, we can check in on it, but you don't have to be doing that every hour of the day, midnight on key days. And then a lot of this gets emailed to the teams or flagged however they want, whatever channels. So yeah. So again, but this was the starting point where we could predict orders that allows us to do the optimization part, which is really, I think, the goal for any organization, finding the way to lower the amount of unsold inventory. And a computer and these algorithms are going to be able to do a lot of things around optimization faster than we're going to be able to do, right, as people.
100%. And the trends are there across every hosting platform and every show. They're very similar if you look at them granularly. There's differences, absolutely, when shows are weighted more heavily on one app versus another, on how their downloads are coming, or the commitment from the audience, the size of the show, the legacy of the show, all of these interesting different things. But like, I don't know, I really want to applaud you, because I think that this is a risk that you took to build out this business at a point where I don't think people were ready for this level of maturity in it. But I think people get it now. This isn't that your show is a failure. It's that you didn't look at the data granularly enough. And I think that that's not a mistake of the hosting platforms, because these hosting platforms host the content, allow all the creator tools, many of them allow for ad sales additionally on there, and have so many things that they have to offer. That's why when you create a website today, like, Squarespace isn't just like, LOL, do you want us to serve ads for you? Like, that doesn't happen. Everybody piecemeals out their thing. You have your website, you have your ad server, you have sometimes third-party tools like that YieldX part that we're talking about there to optimize it. You have other data sources, all these different things. In podcasting, until Flightpath came out with this, right, it was, you have one thing. You have one silo for everything. It's like your web hosting is also your ad server, is also your programmatic solution. That's a lot of pressure. And no matter how big our industry gets, we're never going to be fully served by that. We're going to need these companies to piece out different departments and products. So I'm just incredibly impressed by what you built with Flightpath here, because first off, we saw the precog to identify your actual downloads and your actual impressions and to get ready for that future. Now we're seeing the campaign, which is really attractive to see how are you going to end up, and get that information as soon as possible. And then next, what we're going to get into is, what do you do with that? You have all this information. This isn't just like Sean's way to give each of you an anxiety attack and get your insurance build up. It's to figure out, what do you do with that? And with all this information, I'm sure that you guys have a lot in store for how you help people solve this without them having to be Excel wizards.
That's the whole idea. I think when you look at the current weight right now, it's all on the ops team, right? Like the ops team is having to provide reports every way from Sunday to shows, to producers, right? Managing creative, but also then to the business side and finance, right? And then the numbers mismatch between what they send and what finance logs into the host with. And so, yeah, I think what we're seeing right now is there's a lot that can happen if we could, at the beginning of a campaign, like I showed you, just tell everyone we're going to come in at 97%. And that's in December, right? On a large campaign.
Like, so powerful.
Yeah. And that just lets finance go, okay, we're comfortable in this. We don't have to ask for a report every month because it's our biggest campaign, right, of the year. They can log in and check and see how we're doing.
But that login's the key, right? Because that ad ops person, if they have to scramble tomorrow after they've sent out the finance data, that finance person can if the normal way of doing it, if I send out that finance data and I have to scramble tomorrow to make changes and I don't update them for a month or for a quarter or whatever it is that I'm responsible as the ad ops person, it could mess up everything. It could mess up all the projections. The fact that this person can get literally an alert and hold a meeting, right, to figure 100%. Out what's up.
And we've already gotten some good just feedback. This is a version that's going to be a little different from what goes live. So we've already had some really great UAT because we put this in front of finance and they were just like, get rid of the chart and give us this with the export. And so we're making those changes. Right?
I love it.
We're going to move the chart over to overview, but literally finance is like, we are missing a field. So we've added it in what you're seeing here. And then they're like, yeah, just give us an export to CSV and Excel and they're good, right? They can take this and put it into their models.
Yeah.
And now what we're working on next is overall. If we can, this is our path, the Flightpath. If we can predict a flight, which everyone said you can't because we're third party, right? And then we're like, cool, we've done that. We're now going to give you availability into the future. Everyone was like, that's impossible. We've done it. And now we're like, hey, let's show a campaign from, out 18 months into the future or a year. And really what's going to be next is predict the business, like actually show how all these campaigns are going to roll up financially, which is work that the finance team is having to do now, but they're having to like fudge it and put in guesswork, right? Based on their gut. So we'll be able to roll all this up at a business level.
This is so staggeringly powerful. I mean, just think of it for an M&A tool, right? Being able to use this when you want to like potentially buy a show or a network or something and being able to have them upload everything into here, get it cleared through here and figure out the projections for it. Like, it's so powerful. Sean, once again, absolute home run with Flightpath. I want to remind everybody that the deep dives are supposed to be a general overview where I nerd out about the value of these products with an expert who's built it, like Sean here. So it's incredibly important to me that you guys reach out directly to Sean. This platform is getting integrated with more and more hosting platforms. It is the publishers driving that. So if you are on a platform and you want to get this integrated, reach out to Sean so you can connect with him. We'll put information at the end card here, but Sean will give you a hands-on demo for how this will help you and your business. And just make sure to let them know that you watched the Sounds Profitable Product Deep Dive. And Sean, we'll see you back next quarter for your third product deep dive.
I'm really looking forward to it. Thank you, Bryan.
Thank you.